Florida has been on the warpath against education, recently rejecting hundreds of math books for what they claim to be critical race theory and liberal indoctrination. They even posted some examples of what they consider to be objectionable from the books. And so, look, I've been asking for examples of what they would, consider to be critical race theory or indoctrination. Here's what they said. Here's their examples. So I kind of put these together about some of the stuff that they had rejected in these books. Social and emotional learning. So there is the sample materials here. Yeah, okay. I really do not see an issue here. I think the biggest, the thing that pops out is the adding and subtracting polynomials where it says, what, me, racist? More than 2 million people have tested their racial prejudice using an online version of the implicit association test. And the chart, of course, is how they arrive at the conclusion, or shows you basically the formulas of figuring out how to test that racial bias. So those those are the examples that Florida had given. The New York Times also obtained some of these books, and they have their own examples of what they thought that Florida might be objecting to. And so here's from that report. Using online sample materials provided by publishers to Florida school districts, the New York Times was able to review about 21 of the rejected books and see what may have led the state to reject them. Now, because Florida has released few details about its textbook review process, it is unknown whether these examples actually led to the rejections or not. But there's a little bit of assumption at play. Now, in most of the books that they had reviewed, there was little that touched on race and absolutely no examples of critical race theory. Now, that's what we've been saying all along. They're not teaching critical race theory in K through 12. That is a college level course. Now, the implicit bias test in math, again, that wasn't actually testing the students' racial biases. It was giving an application of the math models that were used to determine racial bias. They're not actually telling kids that you're racist. Okay? So, look, only somebody who wants to interpret it that way can see it that way. Now, the data, however, not shockingly, is going to show that Republicans, because they do a breakdown by political affiliation, tend to have more racial bias based on their own answers to those implicit bias questions. So no wonder Florida looks at that and says, no, we're going to hide that. We don't want people to realize that Republicans are more racist according to our own answers. Oops. Revealing a little bit too much, right? Now, the Times also explains that many of the textbooks included something called social and emotional learning. I had talked about this before. And so now that is a practice, if you missed that, that has roots in psychological research that tries to help students develop a mindset that will help them with success. Well, we want academic success. But not just academic, but also social success in the workplace. And of course, teaching empathy. Now, here's an example of that from the Times. Okay, so that's an example. Here we are. This is from marketing materials provided by the company, Big Ideas Learning. Big Ideas. Now, those elementary books were rejected in Florida. This diagram names core skills students should develop and gives an example of how to conquer fear and build self-confidence. Okay. That circular diagram names 5 core skills students should develop: self-awareness, self-management, responsible decision-making, social awareness, relationship building. That framework was developed by an education nonprofit called CASEL. Okay, so there it is. There it is. In the example of self-awareness is Newton is afraid of heights. He doesn't want to cross a hanging bridge in the Belize jungle. His friends give him the self-confidence he needs to successfully walk over the bridge. Oh no. Emotional support and self-confidence. How dare we teach children that? My God. You know what a real conservative would do? Real conservative would push Newton off that bridge for being a beta male. Ah, you're scared. You're scared of a little bridge?
Beta male. Beta.
Oh yeah, you know what? We're just gonna push you over. We don't need you. You're dead weight. And then you know what a real conservative would do? Cut the bridge out from behind him. You don't get to cross that bridge. No, you want to get here? You want to get here where I'm at? Bootstraps. Bootstraps. Now, you think I'm being hyperbolic? Maybe a little. But honestly, not really. Because let me give you an example here. So you have Christopher Rufo. I'm pretty sure you've heard of him before. He's a so-called right-wing thought leader. And he thinks that this kind of education is making children too soft. Oh. In a March interview conducted over email, he stated that while social and emotional learning sounds positive and uncontroversial in theory, in practice, SEL serves as a delivery mechanism for radical pedagogies, such as critical race theory and gender deconstructionism. The intention of SEL is to soften children at an emotional level, reinterpret their normative behavior as an expression of repression, whiteness, and internalized racism, and then rewire their behavior according to the dictates of left-wing ideology. This guy sounds like he is so far up his ass he can see what he ate for lunch. Like you can't get more pretentious than that asshole. I mean, how's that for internalized, by the way, being up your own ass? Now, Rufo also raised concerns that social and emotional learning requires teachers to serve as psychologists, which they are not equipped to do. That's funny because the right wing has no problem forcing teachers to do things that they're not equipped to do, while also making sure that they're not equipped to do the job that they're supposed to do, which is teaching. I mean, honestly, wasn't Florida one of the states that were pushing to have teachers serve as armed guards in their classrooms to be able to know which student they have to shoot in a mass shooter situation? Instead of doing anything to curb gun violence and reduce the incidences of mass shootings in this country? No. They just wanted to give teachers guns and incentivize them to have more guns and instruct them how to kill their own students. The teachers totally are equipped for that, according to the right wing, but not equipped to be psychologists? Come on. What is this? And at the same time, they also demonize teachers' unions and consistently cut funding to schools. But no, it's the social and emotional learning. That's the real problem. Oh yes, we're teaching kids how to be decent people. Can't have that. Can't have that. And by the way, DeSantis also believes that education that factors into the fact that children have emotions is actually bad. Oh, they should just be focused on math, fractions, decimals. Don't let those pesky emotions get in your way. You got to do the task. You got to do the math. It's almost as if they treat children as if they're just robots. And that's what it is, too. Blank slate robots that you can order around. Because honestly, that's how they see other people, other human beings, adults. No. You listen and you follow orders. You get your ass in the mines. You get your ass in the factory. I don't care about how you feel. No, go and make me money. That's what it's all about. They don't consider them to be humans. And by the way, they also, I think there's a lot of right-wingers out there that consider to be children to essentially be a person that is supposed to be a copy of themselves, right? No, you have to be exactly like me. You're my little mini person, a little mini me, right? And so I'm going to teach you all of my values, and you better think the same way that I do. And if you don't, it must be liberal indoctrination. Must be. Now, again, you might think that that's too clear. Or I'm sorry, that's too far. But let me make it clear to you why they are wrong. Young people are complex human beings with complex emotions. I know. I used to be one of them. We all used to be. Did you forget what it was like to be a kid? To be young? Do you remember having emotions? Look, they do have complex social, emotional, and logical issues. They've got to learn to exist in a teamwork setting or by themselves, to prioritize work versus play. We all have to learn that at some point. That's something that becomes very important into adulthood. Now, also, you have to learn how to deal with people and function in society. Kids are not automatons. And a lot of people consider them to unfortunately not have any agency. And I think that is a bit misguided. They do have agency. Yes, of course, you have to look at it age appropriately. And of course, most importantly, you have to do guidance as an adult. But you also have to understand that they have feelings. And that those feelings are legitimate. And that you have to understand that sometimes they don't have the emotional control to be able to not act out on those feelings. So, you have to guide them to be able to express themselves in a healthy way and to deal with situations. And that's not just a parent's job, because what the schools are doing is preparing people for life, for work, for society. You got to get along with your coworkers. You got to have certain level of social skills. And, again, depending on the age, you've got to learn that emotional control. So to recap, simply put, kids are people too, and they need guidance. That includes dealing with emotion and social situations. That's what this education is about. And incorporating that into work situations. Now, of course, many of these rejected textbooks prompt students to consider emotions. And of course, the right wing did not like that. For example, in the McGraw-Hill 5th grade book, students are encouraged at the beginning of the school year to write a math biography, reflecting on their feelings about the subject and how they expect math could help them enjoy hobbies or achieve their goals. Now, according to Stephanie Jones, a developmental psychologist and expert on social emotional learning at the Harvard Graduate School of Education, she says that a math biography is a way of helping kids. There's a fair amount of evidence that indicates that if you surface your uncertainty and anxiety about something, it's easier to grapple and manage it. Teachers could then read the biographies to learn what students might need extra support, people who are more anxious at math. Look, I hate math. That's how I feel about it. It's always how I felt about it. I think it's very tedious, doing math problems that I'd never need in the real world. But also, I've learned later on that I do have adult ADHD, and I had it when I was a kid too. So I get extremely bored very easily. Perhaps if someone had known that, if we had social emotional learning back when I was a child, maybe I wouldn't have such a burning hatred of math and wouldn't have had such a struggle dealing with it. And so that probably would have helped me back in the day, and probably would have helped countless people. But no, social emotional learning, bad, apparently. There's more. The textbooks that Florida rejected are also filled with references to character traits like perseverance and cooperation. Oh no. A first grade textbook from the publisher Savas Learning Company, formerly known as Pearson K through 12, repeatedly refers to the importance of effortful learning, learning together, and having a growth mindset. Throughout the book, cartoon characters, children pop up on the sides of pages to remind students of these ideas. In fact, here is an example of that. Okay. Gee, does that look like critical race theory? I don't know. That cartoon child, she's black, must be critical race theory. Wow. As far as you got to have a growth mindset. Try a new way when you're stuck. That's actually pretty good advice. But oh no, growth mindset. We do not want growth. That sounds progressive. You have too much growth, you're going to grow into a communist. It seems like that's what they think, that they actually believe in this stuff. Now, a rejected geometry textbook from the publisher Study Edge prompted students to rate from 1 to 4 how willing they are to try new things in math or persevere when something is challenging. Great. That's smart. Yes, try a new way. Persevere. Keep working at it. Now, what this is basically, to me, seems like critical thinking, teaching kids how to think critically when presented with a problem, to come up with actual solutions. Hey, this way does not work. Well, let's try something else, and not give up until we find the answer. I just figured out why conservatives hate it. Now remember, conservatives are, conservative, right? Their entire ideology is to conserve, to keep doing the same thing over and over, even if it doesn't work. And especially if it doesn't work for certain people. And of course, to never try new things, because new things are communism. And bad, and makes baby Jesus cry. The thing that they're trying to do is conserve the old ways, the old social hierarchies, the old gender roles, religion. All of that depends on not doing anything about stuff that doesn't work. Because to them, it does work for them. I mean, in their example, and we've seen evidence to this from the fact that they don't think that this is a problem. A woman working a job, the same job as a man, ends up usually getting paid less for the same work. Now, conservatives look at this and they say, well, let's not solve that problem because she deserves less money. Why? Because she's a woman, obviously. And she's the weaker sex. That's according to Marjorie Taylor Greene. She said those words. I didn't. What about a problem with race in this country? Oh, no, there's no problem. Racism is over, friend. I mean, especially since I'm not and never have been treated poorly for the color of my skin. And so, we shouldn't do anything because there's no problem. I don't see a problem. Why should I have to critically think about anything when I'm doing just fine? I don't really care about you. Let's just do the same policies. Give money to the rich. So you understand that this is why conservatives hate education in general, because it provides either solutions or encourages people to think about different solutions. Over the past year, Republican Party activists have increasingly focused on what they call the excesses of progressive education. And it was at that time social emotional learning came under fire. In June 2021, for example, the Florida Department of Education sent a memo to publishers of math textbooks advising them not to include social emotional learning and culturally responsive teaching in their materials. Timothy Doerr, Director of Teacher Leadership at Northwestern, called that short-sighted. and said research showed that incorporating social and emotional learning into text helps students learn social skills. If you ask 100 CEOs what skills they want in a new hire, the top 5 skills are going to be about social and emotional learning, not algebra, he said. Are you a nice person to talk to? Are you going to be a good coworker? Get along with the team. We know that the best way to teach that is to combine it with math, social studies, whatever. Now, look, that makes sense. That makes sense. Do you want to work with assholes? No, nobody wants to work with an asshole. Yes, people want to work with people that are good to work with. Especially when, since in the current, modern context of work, we spend, as people, a majority of our week, of our time at work. Do you think that, like, do you really want to spend 8 hours a freaking day with a bunch of dicks? No, I don't. No, I want to spend it with good people, doing something positive, doing good things. But apparently they don't agree. Now, getting back to critical race theory, right? Apparently there are few references to race throughout these math textbooks, not shockingly, though the publishers did take care to include word problems with ethnically diverse names and foods. For example, empanadas. Oh no, it's the empanadas! The empanadas are coming over the border. We've got to ban them from the country. Now, a rejected McGraw-Hill pre-algebra textbook did include some mini biographies of mathematicians throughout history, which makes sense, right? So, look, is it important for learning pre-algebra? Not necessarily, as far as like learning actually how to do it, the steps. But I think it is interesting to give people context. And so now, the biographies of the people, and look, that even might make me read it because I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Well, it turns out this is why they rejected it. Almost all of the people biographied in this textbook were women or people of color. Of course. Now, one of them is a page from, a short biography of Dorothy Johnson Vaughan, an African-American mathematician who led a computing unit for the agency now known as NASA. So, of course, people of color and women have had huge impacts. We couldn't have gotten to the moon without women programming for NASA. So that's really important, okay? Now, of course, these people, like Ron DeSantis, they want to erase women, black women in particular, from history, from these important achievements, and not celebrate their impacts on our history, on our society. Let's just ignore their contributions. Why? In order to make, well, not the students, but white males feel good about themselves. And that's all it is. Their entire idea in Florida and a lot of these states is to try and basically give out participation trophies for all the incredibly average white men. That's really it. And so they can't have it. They can't have white men not feel special. Look, normal people, by the way, normal people do not have issues in highlighting people of color and their accomplishments in addition to society. Normal people. And most of the people in this country are normal people. But there's a subset of people that hate it, and that's racist. Why? Because it destroys racial assumptions. And, by the way, misogynistic assumptions. So it hurts their feelings, and they can't have it. They are the snowflakes. Racists and misogynists are the biggest snowflakes ever. They get triggered by the mere existence of somebody who is different. And, by the way, somebody who has achieved something. They demand special treatment and believe that they should get a participation trophy. And let me give you an example, right? I always love it when they cry about lack of a White History Month. Oh, black people, they get an entire month for their history. Why isn't there a White History Month? I want to be special. I want my award. What did you do? I was born white. Why do you need an award for that? What, like, you are asking for a participation trophy. I mean, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
Beta male.
How weak are you? How weak are you to point at something? And by the way, there's a reason that black people have a Black History Month. It's because of this very thing. That textbooks, for example, in Florida, love to gloss over and ignore black contributions to our society. That's why there has to be a Black History Month, to celebrate those achievements that racists love to cover up and ignore. So come on. No, look, these people, their real problem is that they're so incredibly inadequate. They have done nothing, they've added nothing, but they expect to be praised anyway because they think they're better than someone else based solely on their color of their skin. And you know, black people, women, minorities, they have to work so much harder to get even to an even footing with a person who's white. Now, I know if you're a white person and you're sitting in poverty, you're like, what the hell, man? What are you talking about? Privilege? I'm not privileged. I'm poor. Well, here's the thing about that, right? I grew up poor. You're not poor because of the color of your skin. That's like the difference. That's the difference. Yes, you are struggling. And it is an unfair system to a lot of different people. There is. The system loves to crush poor people. I understand that completely. But you're not in a worse position because of the color of your skin. That's the difference. White people, yeah, poor. Black people, poor, but then treated worse, just as a result of being black. That's the difference. That's the privilege. And it may not seem like much to you, but to a black person, it's a lot. But again, I'm talking about racist, I'm talking about inadequate people. Okay? And so that brings me to DeSantis. DeSantis is an average person. He is not special. There's nothing special about him. There's nothing special about any of these people who just want to use racism to cover up for their own inadequacies.